Inside a dimensional rift, 3 members of the hero party, Goran, Eric, and Luck, have been engaged in battle for several months on end, and they finally managed to deal some significant damage, severing the arm of the Demon Lord and forcing him to retreat for the meantime. Goran is a little disappointed that they weren't able to outright kill the Demon Lord back there, but with that kind of injury, the Demon Lord isn't going to launch any new attacks anytime soon, so they believe they can finally rest easy and return home. Eric and Goran are excited to finally get to see their families again because this battle dragged on far longer than they had expected it to, so much so that Eric missed the birth of his child, and Goran is worried that his daughter may no longer remember what he looks like. But Luck has no such issues because he has never so much as had a girlfriend, let alone a family. The only thing Luck has ever really cared about is his research, so he says he has no desire to start a family. But the others tell him he should give it a try because having people waiting for you to return home makes winning the battle and surviving all the more worth it. However, saying that out loud probably jinxed it because a second later, the 3 of them are confronted by a massive horde of demons, and they are absolutely mortified because they had no idea there were this many left. There's no way they'll be able to leave like this, so Goran and Eric both get ready to fight till their last breath. But Luck has something else in mind. He may not have wanted a family, but he understands how important Goran and Eric's families are to them, and the chances of all of them surviving a battle like this when they are already weary from the previous battles are slim, so he wants to at least make sure they can make it home, even if that means he has to stay behind. He tells Eric and Goran that they should leave things here to him, but the 2 outright refuse because they can't just abandon their friend. However, Luck reminds them that the Demon Lord hasn't been defeated yet, and although he was injured, when he recovers, they will need the strength of the hero to hold him back, so they can't die here. Goran understands Luck's point, but although that may be true for a hero like Eric, Goran is just a warrior, so he says he's going to stay back and fight. Luck then reminds him that he has a daughter at home to take care of, so he shouldn't worry about him. Eric and Goran still refuse to leave their friend behind, and Luck expected a reaction like that, so he uses his magic to create a rock wall to seal off the cave entrance and stop Eric and Goran from smashing through. They yell at Luck through the wall not to do anything stupid while trying to get through the barrier, but it's no use, and on the other side, Luck charges headfirst into battle against the demons. Several days go by, and Luck has managed to survive so far, but he's nearing his limit, and to make matters worse, he gets caught off guard by one of the demon generals, who then begins draining Luck's mana with the Drain Touch skill. That one touch wipes out a large portion of Luck's mana reserves, so there's no way he would be able to continue fighting like this. Fortunately for Luck, he possesses a learning skill that allows him to learn any skill that has been used against him, so he is able to copy the Drain Touch skill and uses it to drain as much energy as he can from the Demon General, resulting in the Demon General crumbling to dust. Having acquired the Drain Touch skill, Luck's odds of survival are looking a lot better now since he has a way to recover in the midst of battle, and he's definitely going to need it because he knows it's going to take him forever to get through that massive horde of demons. Luck continues fighting for weeks and months without a single break, and he has already lost his sense of time after being down here for so long. Whenever he runs low on energy, he uses Drain Touch on one of the demons to recover, and whenever he feels sleepy, he casts a spell called Marionette on himself to force his body to continue fighting even while he's unconscious. In this way, he has become less of a human and more of a mindless killing machine whose sole purpose is to wipe out all the demons, and 10 years later, Luck is closing in on accomplishing that goal. He has already taken out the vast majority of the demon army, and now the only one left is the Demon King himself. The Demon King's fire magic is no joke, so Luck plans to close the distance, and use Drain Touch on him to recover a little first, but the Demon King is already expecting that. So the moment Luck makes contact with his body, he uses magic to cancel his Drain Touch. This leaves Luck unable to heal himself, and if things carry on like this, then it will only be a matter of time before he gets worn down. He clashes a few more times with the Demon Lord, and the Demon Lord ends up smashing through Luck's blade, but he says he doesn't really need it since he's a mage anyway, and he proceeds to cast a Hell Flame spell aimed right at the Demon King. The spell actually manages to stun the Demon King, so Luck gets in close and casts another Hell Flame spell right in front of the Demon Lord's body. This time, the Demon Lord uses magic to defend himself against the flames, but at that moment, Luck also simultaneously casts the Drain Touch spell, and the Demon Lord isn't able to defend against both at the same time, so he gets locked into a standoff where Luck is constantly draining energy from the Demon King to keep his Hell Flame spell going. And Luck is prepared to stay there for as long as it takes to defeat the Demon King. Luck kept those spells going for countless days until he had finally emptied out the Demon Lord's entire mana reserves, and once he finally regained self-awareness and realized he had won, he grabbed the Demon King's sword and celebrated his victory. Now that he had defeated the Demon King, he could finally go home, but there's a bit of a problem with that since he doesn't know where he is right now. He assumes he will probably come across his city eventually, if he just follows the road, but he lost his adventurer's card and all his belongings during the fight, so he has no way to identify himself. Luck eventually makes it to the royal capital, and he thinks it looks a whole lot different compared to the last time he saw it, but he doesn't pay it much mind and decides to head in. However, he forgot that he was still carrying the demon lord's sword, so when the guards see him, they freak out and tell him to stop. Luck stops and asks them if anything is wrong, and seeing that Luck doesn't have any malicious intentions, the guards chalk it up to some innocent absent-mindedness, and help him wrap up his sword so he doesn't scare the people in town. They were even kind enough to give him some spare clothes they happened to have on hand, and Luck is grateful for their kind gesture since he didn't have any money to buy new clothes at the moment. He then starts walking through town, and the first thing he wants to do is stop by Goran's place to see how he and his family are doing, but when he gets there, he finds a huge mansion there. He knocks on the gate and asks to see Goran, but Goran's butler asks him if he has an appointment, and Luck doesn't, so he says he won't be able to meet Goran today. Luck tells him he's sure Goran would be willing to make an exception for an old friend, but when the butler hears him say that, he assumes Luck is just a scam artist trying to impersonate the great saint, Luck, so he tells him to get out of there, and Luck has no choice but to leave. As he is walking through town, he happens to spot a giant statue, and he doesn't remember this being there the last time he was in the capital, so he asks a random passerby who it is. The man is shocked that Luck doesn't know who the statue is at first, but after taking a look at him, he assumes Luck is a kid from the countryside who just never learned about it, so he explains that this right here is a statue of the great Saint Luck, the man whose noble sacrifice single-handedly saved the entire world. Luck is left absolutely dumbfounded since he had no idea that he had become so famous. And this is also a huge problem for him, because if everyone believes he died 10 years ago, then he's going to have a hard time verifying his identity. After all, who would believe that he managed to survive and fight for 10 years non-stop? For now, he just heads over to the guild to see what he can do about his adventurer registration, but just as he's about to talk to the receptionist, Goran suddenly shows up looking for him with tears in his eyes and grabs Luck before pulling him into a private room. He had heard about Luck showing up at his house, so he came to see for himself, and he recognized Luck the second he laid eyes on him. He says he's so happy to have him back, and Luck is surprised to see how old Goran looks now, but Goran says it has been 10 years, so of course he would look older. He gets Luck a plate of food since he says he is really hungry, and Luck is overjoyed to be able to eat real food again since, the entire time he was locked in battle, he was sustaining himself off the energy he drained from the demons, but his actual stomach was always empty. However, after hearing that, Goran stops him from eating and tells Luck it's not a good idea to overdo it with solid food if he really hasn't eaten for the past 10 years. He asks his butler to go get Luck some rice gruel that will be easy to digest, and a little while later the gruel arrives, but the one carrying it isn't the butler, but rather, Eric. Luck is happy to see Eric again after all this time, and Eric is equally glad to see that Luck managed to survive, but after he calms himself down, he does feel the need to ask how he ended up like this because not only has he not aged at all over the past 10 years, Eric could swear that Luck actually looks a lot younger than he did when he first started out. Luck has no idea what they are talking about at first, but then he takes a look at himself in the mirror, and he realizes that he really does look a lot younger than he did before. Now that he thinks about it, he recalls that he did absorb a large amount of the Demon Lord's life force back when he was fighting him, so that might have been what made him younger. Both Eric and Goran freeze up when they hear that Luck actually managed to defeat the Demon King, and they explain that the kingdom had been beefing up its army in preparation for the Demon King's eventual return. However, if Luck really killed the Demon King, then Eric says that, as the king, he owes him a reward. Luck is stunned for a moment when he hears that Eric is the king now, although he does recall Eric mentioning that he was a royal at one point, and apparently, after he returned, the previous king thought he deserved the title for driving back the Demon Lord, so he was crowned king. As for Goran, he became the guild master of the Adventurers Guild, so Luck thinks they've both managed to do pretty well for themselves, but they tell him he's just as successful as they are because he was named a great saint and the savior of the world. He even received the title of Archduke at the recommendation of Eric, and he's surprised to hear that Eric managed to convince the other nobles to let him receive a title like that since he remembers how fussy they were about him being a commoner. But then again, at the time, they thought Luck was dead, so it was more of a symbolic gesture. If that's the case, then Luck asks if him coming back to life isn't going to cause problems among the nobility. And now that Eric and Goran think about it, they do think that's going to be a problem. But Luck tells them there's no need to worry about it since he doesn't really want to come into the public eye, so he's fine with it if they just pretend he's still dead. After all, he didn't have any friends or family who would have been worried about him. Eric asks him what he intends to do from now on, and Luck says he was actually thinking about starting over from scratch as an adventurer. Goran pulls a couple of strings and has a special guild card made for Luck, so it will hide his S-rank Supreme Mage class and only display his F-rank Warrior class. And with that, Luck heads to the guild to take on his first quest. However, when the receptionist, Aaron, finds out that he wants to take on a goblin extermination quest all by himself, she refuses to allow it because she has seen way too many rookie adventurers die because they are overconfident. Luck can't exactly tell her that he's really S-rank, so he ends up getting forced into a team with 2 rookies named Ario and Ginny, a mage and bow scout, and although he had originally wanted to go solo, he decides he might as well help train the rookies while he's at it. He gets to know the 2 of them as they set out on their journey, and he finds out that Ginny is actually pretty good at scouting, so it doesn't take long for them to locate the goblin nest. They make their way inside and begin taking out as many goblins as they can, but there are a lot more in here than Ginny anticipated, and all of a sudden, they hear the scream of a hobgoblin coming from deeper in the cave. Luck gets the feeling that there's still something stronger in there, but before he can put his finger on it, he hears the sound of a young swordswoman charging at the hobgoblin, and it looks like she came to destroy the goblin nest as well.